I still remember the way the sunlight filtered through the lace curtains that morning, painting soft golden patterns on my white silk robe. I stood in front of the mirror, heart fluttering like a caged bird, touching the delicate veil my grandmother had worn on her own wedding day. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My name is Sophia, and for 28 years I had tried so hard to be the perfect daughter. The one who made straight A's, who stayed close to home, who smiled through every family dinner even when my opinions were gently dismissed. I thought if I loved them enough, they would eventually see me, really see me. I met Daniel 2 years earlier at a quiet bookstore cafe. He wasn't the wealthy, established man my parents had always pictured for me. He was a kind-hearted architect with gentle eyes and calloused hands from actually building the things he designed. His laughter felt like home. For the first time, I felt chosen for who I truly was, not for how well I could perform the role they wrote for me. When I told my parents I was engaged, the silence that followed still echoes in my chest. My mother, Lydia, set her teacup down so carefully it barely made a sound. My father, Richard, stared at me like I had confessed to a crime. Sophia, my mother said softly, "He's nice, but nice doesn't build a future. You deserve better, better." That word became a knife they twisted slowly over the next 18 months. I tried to ignore the subtle sabotage. The way my mother would forget to return calls from our wedding planner. The way my father suddenly remembered a cousin's wedding on the exact same date and hinted that family loyalty mattered more. The quiet comments at Sunday dinners. "Are you sure you're not rushing this, darling? You've changed so much since meeting him." But I was in love. Deeply, quietly, fiercely in love. And I believed love could soften even the hardest hearts. The week before the wedding, I thought we had turned a corner. My parents offered to host the rehearsal dinner at their beautiful countryside home. They smiled more. They asked questions about Daniel's family. I felt hope bloom in my chest like spring flowers after a long winter. I had no idea they were already sharpening the blades. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to birds singing and my phone buzzing with messages from excited bridesmaids. My heart was so full it felt like it might burst. I didn't know that just a few miles away, my parents were making phone calls that would try to tear my entire world apart. As I slipped into my wedding gown, the one I had dreamed about since I was a little girl, I whispered to my reflection, "Today, everything changes for the better." What I didn't know was that my parents had planned their own version of better, and it had nothing to do with my happiness. The ceremony was supposed to begin at 4 p.m. under the old oak trees at the vineyard we had chosen. By 3:30, guests were arriving, laughter and soft music filling the air. I was in the bridal suite when my best friend Mia burst in, her face pale. "Sophia, you need to see this." She handed me her phone. A group chat for our extended family and close friends had exploded. Messages from my mother's number, screenshots of supposed text conversations between Daniel and another woman, heart emojis, plans to meet, claims that he was only marrying me for stability while keeping his real relationship secret. My hands started shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. "That's not true," I whispered. "That can't be real." But the damage was already spreading like poison. Some guests were leaving. Others were whispering. I saw my aunt on the phone, voice low and urgent. Then my father appeared at the door, his expression solemn, but somehow satisfied. "Sweetheart, we tried to warn you. We had him investigated. We didn't want to do this today, but you left us no choice. You deserve to know the truth before you make the biggest mistake of your life." The pain hit me like a wave crashing over my head. I couldn't breathe. My perfect day, the day I had planned with so much love, was crumbling in front of me. Daniel was outside, being confronted by my cousins. I could hear raised voices. I ran to him. His face was devastated, confused. "Sophia, I swear to you, none of this is real." I would never. I believed him. In my shattered heart, I still believed him. But the humiliation was suffocating. My mother arrived in her elegant mother of the bride dress, tears in her eyes that looked strangely rehearsed. We only did this because we love you, Sophia. One day you'll thank us. That was the moment something inside me broke. And something else woke up. I stood there in my wedding gown, surrounded by whispers and pitying glances, and I felt the full weight of their betrayal. This wasn't protection. This was control. They would rather destroy my happiest day than lose their grip on my life. Guests were leaving in droves. The cake sat untouched. The flowers I had personally chosen began to wilt in the late afternoon heat. Daniel held my hands, his voice cracking as he asked if I still wanted to go through with it. I looked at my parents standing together, watching like they had and in that moment, I made a quiet decision. I squeezed Daniel's hands and whispered, "Give me 1 hour." I walked back toward my parents, my veil trailing behind me like a ghost. They looked almost proud, as if they had successfully saved their daughter from herself. I smiled at them. A small, calm smile. "Thank you," I said softly. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are." My mother reached for me. "Darling, we know," I interrupted, my voice steady even as tears streamed down my face. "You don't get to speak right now. You just tried to destroy the man I love and the life I chose. On the day that was supposed to be mine, the pain was still there, raw and bleeding. But beneath it, a cold clarity was forming. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I simply turned away and began walking back to Daniel, my gown brushing against the grass like a farewell. What my parents didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months quietly preparing for the possibility that their love had conditions. I had saved every email, every text where they tried to discourage the marriage. I had recorded some of the more cutting conversations. And most importantly, I had discovered something about my grandmother's will that even they didn't fully understand, but I wasn't ready to reveal that yet. The real storm was only beginning. The wedding didn't happen that day. Not in the way we planned out. Instead, Daniel and I stood together in front of the few guests who remained, mostly his family and my true friends. I looked into his eyes and said, "I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." Not despite them. Because of who we are together. We said our vows under that same oak tree as the sun began to set. Just the two of us. A small circle of love. And a photographer who captured the most beautiful, tear-stained, real moments of my life. My parents stood at a distance, watching in stunned silence. But that was only the beginning of their surprise. 2 weeks later, I sent them a letter. Not an angry one. A calm, clear one. I told them I loved them, but I could no longer allow their conditional love to define my worth. I included copies of every manipulative message and recording. I told them the private investigator they had hired to dig up dirt on Daniel had actually uncovered nothing, because there was nothing to find. The screenshots had been cleverly edited. Then came the part that left them truly speechless. My grandmother, my father's mother, had passed away the year before. In her final months, she had changed her will after witnessing how my parents treated me. She left me the family estate, the investments, and a letter explaining that she wanted me to be free to live my life without their interference. The only condition: I had to be married for the transfer to complete. We had quietly married in a small civil ceremony the week before. The big wedding, exactly as my grandmother had hoped I would if things went wrong. My parents received legal notice that the family home they lived in, the one they had hosted the rehearsal dinner in, was now under new ownership. Their access to the trust funds they had quietly depended on for years was severed. I didn't do it to destroy them. I did it to free myself. The confrontation happened at what used to be my grandmother's garden. My mother cried real tears this time. My father looked smaller somehow, older. "How could you do this to us?" My mother whispered. I looked at them both with a mixture of sadness and strength I had never felt before. "How could you do it to me?" I replied. "On my wedding day, in front of everyone I loved. You chose control over my happiness. I chose peace over your approval." Daniel stood beside me, silent but solid. His hand in mine was the only anchor I needed. In the months that followed, I heard stories. My parents faced questions from their social circle. Some relationships cooled. They had to adjust to a new reality, one where their daughter was no longer a pawn, but a woman who had chosen herself. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. Some nights I still cry for the parents I wish I had. But I also wake up next to a man who loves me without conditions. We built our home. We started our life. And slowly, I began to heal. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel like your happiness is an embarrassment to the people who are supposed to love you most, hear me clearly. You are not too much. You are not wrong for wanting your own life. And sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give yourself is choosing peace over their approval. My parents tried to ruin my wedding. The twist. I had already saved myself long before they showed their true colors. And today, I am finally beautifully, peacefully free. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're allowed to choose themselves. Until next time, protect your peace, Sophia.